Welcome everyone. Hello, Maureen. So yeah, I guess if we have an audience that is dialed in here, we will waste no further time jumping in on the conversation of how to scale partner operations and programs. I'm Scott Brinker, who will be the host of this panel. I'm the VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot, and I also run the Chief MarTech blog. And we have an all-star panel here of partnership leaders. In the interest of time, to get things diving in, if you don't mind, I'll just briefly introduce each of you. Jay McBain, who's the chief analyst at Canalys and been platform ecosystem guru of the ages. Maureen Little with Okta, who's a VP of Technology Partnerships. Chris, are you on yet? I don't see Chris. All right, hopefully Chris will join us shortly. Chief Growth Officer at Xero, and Connie Wu, Head of Business Development at Asana. So, hello, welcome. Wow, partner ops. So first and foremost, if you're attending this panel, that means you've hopefully completed the requisite entry fee of filling out that partner ops survey that's being run in conjunction with Canalys, partnership leaders, and HubSpot. Mostly trying to just map out, at scale, data of how partner ops is evolving. Hopefully it's a nice compliment to Jay's incredible landscape of the technologies supporting all this partnership ops. So we could easily do like a 3-day seminar on how to scale partner ops and programs. Here for like 45 minutes or 44 minutes and counting, as the clock says. We'll probably only be able to scratch a handful of topics, but because there's so many great topics to dive into, it's almost like we can't go wrong. So questions that I had sort of set up, I guess we'll sort of go along the spectrum of starting from an external perspective, a little bit of thinking about, partner ops and programs primarily to the partner world, and then maybe about halfway through switch into, the implications and what that means inside organizations. So, all right, thumbs up. Everybody's ready to roll. Okay, let's start here. There are tech partnerships, with ISVs and product integrations and developers. There are services and channels partnerships. Most tech companies at scale have both. And there's definitely recognition that these two combine together as a complete ecosystem. Hey, Chris. Chris has joined us. All right, so recognizing these two combine as a complete ecosystem, how do you think about approaching the partner ops and programs perspective? Are they developed to emerge separately for these two segments? Is it increasingly together? Jay, I kind of feel like you're the person who's looked at the most of this across most companies. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think it's a little bit more complicated than two kinds of partnerships. Obviously, inside companies, a lot of those would be segmented or siloed off from each other. Somebody running those tech alliances, somebody running some of the co-innovation work would be separate from the person running that, transactional channel, running the numbers. And, I think this movement that we've gone through in partnership leaders has been so important as that source for those that, now look at partnerships in 6 swim lanes. So at the end of the cookie, in those early 28 moments our customers walk through, most of those moments are partnership driven. You can't go buy the data from MarTech and AdTech on your wonderful tech stack anymore to go buy customer data early. So you've got to go work on partnering with those people and then do an attribution and data sharing and a number of new things technology-wise to make those early moments happen. But marketing has become a partnership challenge. At the point of transaction has always been a challenge, in terms of how to do the resell piece, but more of it's going transaction assist. 24% of marketplace deals are now partners clicking buy on behalf of the customer or working that initial, subscription or consumption model, but not taking the customer's money. But then everything now goes long-term. Every 30 days forever, 76% of companies are going into subscription consumption models, which means that you have to drive adoption, you have to get integrations, you have to do what HubSpot did over the last decade. Just absolutely build raving fans as customers that are excited to come back and renew every cycle. And that's a partnership challenge. Your average customer now has 7 partners in those 3 stages of the customer journey. Now you've got these technology alliances as well. You got strategic alliances up the chain. You've got business alliances. And now all the people are together under a chief partner officer, hopefully, for many companies that are working in these 6 swim lanes, and now bringing them in the front door and providing value to these millions of partners that are out there is now where we are. And that's why we had this survey, and that's why we're having this conversation today.
I think if the question is whether there are different operational teams, honestly, right now, yes. There's different skill sets. It doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a combined set to ensure that all of your data tracking, the amount of money you're spending on software is combined, right? But in the end, while we're merging this and the companies really understanding the value overarching of their ecosystem, partner programs are simply different. Your enablement needs for certain types of partners could be really detailed. So maybe they need their own enablement. Maybe they need different tiering. Maybe they need different commercial agreements and commitments. So right now we do at Okta, and we're a pretty large company, we do have 2 separate partner operations teams, and we just keep them very connected to share resources, playbooks, tools. And some of our major software are shared, and we're always vying, honestly, for the resources out of IT. Come on, everybody, is that like half of our jobs right now? But I would say it's really hard to find a skill set and an experience where they've done both. It just is.
What about you, Connie? I mean, again, it kind of feels like when you're scaling, what is that all saying about the 2 ways to make money, bundling and unbundling? The 2 ways of scaling is, segmenting things and aggregating things. How do you think of partner ops and programs through those 2 lenses?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And thanks again for having me here. This question has really haunted me for a long time, is thinking through do we even have the right systems and the right processes to track all of these different nuances and intricacies? If I think about the traditional revenue funnel, right, it's very, very limited when it comes to capturing partner value and really structured only to capture a narrow set of metrics. That probably works very well if our partners are just resellers. It's pretty clean. They're extension of your sales team, when they're building pipeline and when money is coming in. But where that framework kind of breaks down is when you start to have a more complex ecosystem, and you guys have mentioned, all these different types of categories of partners that do different things, ISVs, services partners, et cetera. And for each of these groups, there are really different types of co-marketing and co-selling motions that happen. Some are naturally going to be more, sales driven, others more marketing driven, and others are going to be more product driven. So success metrics is kind of all over the place, and is going to be different, and it's going to be more nuanced, right? Influenced ARR versus direct. So a lot of the traditional frameworks that we have really cannot track a lot of the intricacies and nuances. And so it's very frustrating to know that sometimes, partners are generating all these goodness. There's no comprehensive dashboard. So what do we do? And I think this is where we have to be very creative and do some translating here as BD leaders. And we do that by going across the org and really stitching together our own framework, our own paradigm, so to speak, on top of these existing processes and systems to show a more complete picture of what different partners do and how their actions connect with business metrics that people understand, right? For example, going to sales and aligning and defining how partners are helping them build pipeline and improve win rates and be able to tag partner influence in CRM, or going to product and pull user engagement data, right, around integrations and create reporting around how all of that correlates with retention and upgrades. And so that's the data. I mean, you can also get some of that data from your partners too. And then on top of that, you got to be super creative and go to C-suite and layer in all the untrackable, unquantifiable stuff and create that holistic story to show how growing a rich ecosystem of different partners can create not just short-term wins, but also long-term competitive advantages. And really, I think this is that art and science project that many of us are already doing, at least some versions of it. And but hopefully, in the future, we can have a super cool tool that helps to help help us stitch and translate and dashboard all of this. But today it's us people going out there and doing it. So
A lot of slide decks, right?
yeah.
Where you at least try and make the charts the same color, but
Yeah,
I just
well,
want to add to that. Yeah, that we're talking a lot about metrics, and you definitely want to tie it to revenue, but you can't ignore that sometimes technology partnerships or integrations, sometimes your ecosystem partners, their measurement is in the usage, because that then has to tie back to customer retention, upsell. You still want to have an end revenue goal, product usage. So that data, I don't know about you, Connie, but that sits like way over here, right?
Oh yeah.
So it is up to all of us to build those dashboards. Those dashboards are key so that you can influence and drive your business forward.
Hey, Chris, welcome. Glad to be able to see you on video too. Yeah, would love your thoughts
Scott.
on, in scaling, partner ops and programs. Yeah, how you've thought about it at Xero from a perspective of like aggregating that under one large ecosystem view versus separate components that might have grown their ops and programs, if not independently, at least sort of in their, somewhat own space.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I appreciate the opportunity to join such an esteemed panel. Yeah, I think there's I'd say a couple things. There's different partnerships, just picking up on the conversation. So if you think about product partnerships, I sometimes call those whole product partnerships. Just like when you add one and one into equal something greater than two, where it's like, hey, you're going to the market with something that actually is complementary and then something greater than the whole. The other ones are just really distribution related or reselling. It's good to be clear and intentional about what you're talking about and then what is in it for each of the different partners. So to the point that's being raised here, how do you then track it? So I'm a big fan of, like, if you think about a partnership, it's not too dissimilar from a product. How do you create awareness? How do you create the initial sign up or launch? And then how do you think about usage and retention? And I think big fan of actually mapping that from the beginning all the way through. It's hard to do that, but there's technology and or API driven solutions that allow you to stitch these things together. So that's the thing that we really get excited about. Our ecosystem is really an extension of what we do, right? So the way we think about it is, you think of 4 quadrants. One being things that we build on our core products, the things that other people build on our core products, in other words, things that can be embedded into our environment, and then the opposite, things that other people build either on or off of Xero. So if you think about each of those 4 quadrants, whether it's first party or third party, or whether it's our real estate or surface area or others, and the strategy is slightly different in each of those. But the overarching thing is being clear about the partnership and then measuring all the way from sign up all the way through retention, so you can start to optimize based upon what each of the partners are trying to solve for.
Cool.
Chris, I was going to jump in and say, Chris, I love the word that you use, is to be clear and to map things out. And I think this is like the type of dialogue and conversations we need to have with our cross-functional teams too. Yeah. Because the moment you have your own point of view on how partner brings value in the different stages that they can come in and bring value, and you communicate that with your cross-functional teams, the light bulb goes off. And right, because they see it, they're like, oh, this is how partners operate. This is where they come in. This is help us out. And therefore, it's much easier for you to sit down with them and say, let's create and carve out a process where we can actually build in the metrics and leverage the processes to track this partner value.
Yeah, that's actually just a quick comment. It's such an insightful point. If you can't, as part of a partnership, articulate the value that the partner is going to get out of it as good as, if not better than them, it really, I found that I or a group struggle to then get alignment inside the company. So I always think about starting there, and not 5 things, but the one thing that a partner is truly trying to get out of this.
Yeah, I want to jump in on the, we've got Scott here, kind of the author of the original MarTech stack. A lot of the story that was written over the last decade can help us as partner leaders. One is that, there are islands of innovation on that MarTech stack. And today, 9,932 companies innovating for marketing leaders, for marketing ops leaders. The data lake that is in between these islands. And now, in the channel world, we have 223 companies that raised $3 billion last year, and we're on this upsurge. I don't think we'll hit 10,000 by the end of the decade, but this idea that there is an incredible richness of data that, you know, partner ops people can go and get by looking around these islands of innovation and leveraging. The second point you made is really on the language, you know, that this partner value. And the big change that we're seeing now is what I call the multiplier. You know, a company like HubSpot, you know, came out and said, you know, for every dollar we sell as a company, which is a lot of them, $1 billion plus of them, you know, you as a partner can go and get $5.80. Whether you want to, you know, do some consulting, do some design and architecture ahead of the game, if you want to come and do the implementations, the integrations, the security, the governance, the data, whichever, you know, play you want to be, you know, we'll break it down to the penny, what your opportunity is. And for you to go make, if you're a big GSI and you want to go make $2 or $3 for every dollar HubSpot makes and make 75% margin doing that, they can have a very quantified, you know, QBR, quarterly business review meeting with you on how to go do that. Like, what does your M&A look like? What does your skills look like? What do your certifications look like? How do I literally go? What are the names, the faces, the places, level of detail to build my business inside that market? And then I can walk over to Salesforce. I can walk up to Microsoft. I can walk over to work we're doing with AWS right now. All these companies are really getting good at this new language and quantifying value and providing literally a roadmap to doubling or tripling your business inside of an ecosystem.
All right, I'm sold. I'm moving into partnerships. This just sounds too cool. All right, I'm going to try and bring this back though to very specifically the challenge of scale, because I think we all buy into like, yes, all right, this is the present and future of the tech industry overall. You had brought up the whole MarTech innovation piece, Jay. So let me turn to that for a second. Like marketing ops, sales ops, these are relatively mature, well-established functions. Partner ops is new. This is emergent. It's earlier in its evolution. What's the relationship here between partner ops and marketing ops and sales ops?
Well, I could go first. I mean, the fact is those 6 swim lanes. What are partner marketing ops? What happens when that partner professional, that channel professional sits in the marketing team reporting to the CMO? You know, the direct marketing team is, you know, using HubSpot and other tools, is trying to get after those moments in that customer journey, you know, trying to capture as many of the 28 moments as they can to win vendor selection. Any moment that they don't win becomes a partnering challenge. So that's a marketing ops, but now connected to partner marketing ops equation. Your mature sales ops, you know, at that point of sale, whether it goes direct or indirect or through a marketplace, it doesn't matter how money changes hands. How does a partner sales ops person go and work with that sales ops person in that revenue game and making sure that you're in your entire market TAM? How does the partner customer success ops person work with the CX team to make sure that every 30 days, you got 7 partners there, making sure that we're measuring and monitoring and managing the moments that keep us a customer for life? You've got now people embedded. And that's where, you know, you've got partner ops people in one of those 6 swim lanes working with someone that may be more mature and just expanding their aperture a bit in terms of recognizing more moments or more activity, you know, to drive, you know, better success.
Esteemed panelists, what about for you? Like where are we at in this journey of partner ops being connected into,
Well,
not quite connected into?
You know, I think that obviously what happened in sales ops, CRM systems in general, marketing technology, a lot of people are trying to add on partner operations and partner systems, right? They're trying to make that a feature. I don't think that's such a bad idea. Again, if you have revenue driving partnerships, trying to go and make a sales team, a CSM organization, anyone log into a different system and register differently or track differently, it's a battle you're not going to win. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of the more traditional stacks trying to add on partnerships, but maybe what they're not doing is listening to actually how these function. So we leverage existing systems that have partner areas and partner functions. They do not fulfill everything that we need. to be very direct, right? I think you're going to see emerging. I think you're going to see a lot of stacks acquire the partner-based technology so that you can go in and have one license. Because the other thing is especially if you're a publicly traded company or you want to be a publicly traded company, guess what? All of the stuff has to be aligned and reportable. And there's these things called RevRec, and people care about this stuff. So I can leverage external technology for a period of time, but when it comes down to things that you want to explain to the street, if you believe that that's really valuable, you'll have to be on systems, and it has to be tracked back. Now, what I would also say though is we're all eager, right? So the number, what did you say, 300 versus how many thousands and thousands, Jay? We're all eager. We're all also extremely vocal. So if anyone is a vendor of partner technology out there, we've all been so hungry. I laugh that I have been so devoid of data and support and resources in my 20 some odd years that I will do anything. I will pretty much test anything that I can. I will give it a go if it improves and streamlines the work. The only other piece that I would add here on systems is just remember when you're doing integrations, no system matters if you haven't influenced your product organization to build it into your integration, right? So I'm sure it must have been a fun battle for you, Scott. I'm assuming HubSpot started all of their integrations with perfect tracking. Did they? Did they not? Sarcasm.
Wait, you can track this stuff?
So we're talking a lot about the systems and the evolution of it, but don't forget that whoever is building or managing the thing that you believe you need to track to show value, again, revenue, customer retention, upsell, right? Then you better make sure it's actually being built into your product so that you can track it.
Yeah, I think part of it when I'm thinking about sales ops and marketing ops and how partner ops interfaces to it, maybe there's a couple dimensions that, like one dimension is absolutely simply the tracking of it, like getting the data aligned, being able to show influence, within marketing campaigns, sales campaigns, certainly, and even customer success. But there's also this increasing level is, like data from the partner world is increasingly connected into these systems, starting to see varying degrees of maturity in how things like marketing campaigns and the way sales management and routing is working, is increasingly leveraging that data. My impression, though, is across the industry, this is still in very early stages of maturity. And that's part of what I was trying to get a sense of, for those of us who are doing this at scale, a bit deeper along in this, but, to our audience who's thinking about scale, like, how they sort of look at the first steps of the relationships between partner ops and marketing ops, sales ops, whether it's systems level or even other kinds of collaboration.
I mean, I would have to echo what Maureen said too. I don't think, partner ops can really operate independent of existing systems. It's very much plugged in. And some of the data that you're going to get is, I would say, cleaner and more self-explanatory, particularly around resell, referral type of relationships. But when it comes to like more marketing, more up the funnel type of stuff, like marketing or integrations, somebody's using your integration, what does that user metric look like? Then you have to be really, really creative. And this is what I meant when I said, it's an art and science project, because, as BD leaders, we know these partners well, we know how they're adding value, and we have to create and tell that story holistically. And that means going to every one of these departments, sales ops, marketing ops, product ops, data science, and basically piece all of these different, components together and say, here is how all of these different partners are bringing value, like product-wise, sales-wise, and marketing-wise. I think right now we don't have that perfect system to do all of that translating and capturing for us. So us as like humans have to go out and do that and be creative about it. But at the end of the day, it's still thinking about how do we capture that data in conjunction with all of these existing systems.
Yeah. So Scott, I'm going to piggyback on the MarTech. Something I wish we did more, by the way, is this being recorded? Something that I wish we did more is your company is creating amazing targeted campaigns, right? For your direct sales organization. the amount of lift that we have to take that campaign, strip it, make it partner oriented, place it into our partner portal, and then permission them to use it, that should absolutely be streamlined. So what I mean here is all of you guys have an existing demand gen team, I assume, right? And if it's not in their nature to think of how to take a creative campaign or targeted calls to action in a digital, whether it be social media or regular campaign, if they're not taking that existing asset that they spent a ton of money on and turning it and handing it over to the right set of partners, you just wasted money. You just wasted something that you already did that you could hand over to your partners, and with limited approvals, allow them to go gangbusters. So that's, that's something, I don't know if it's a systems thing that we could do, but right now we literally have to lift it. We grab it, we see if we can strip it out, we make it partner friendly, we pick it up, we move it over, and we put it into a different portal today with different tracking so that the partner gets that marketing attribution that goes along with it. It's worth it though. It's totally worth it. And I don't know if we leverage our existing marketing functions enough inside that partner team.
No, it's fascinating. You talk about there's a lot of discussion, particularly in tech partnerships, around the platform from a product perspective of how do we get leverage and reuse across the technology. But I think you're right. The opportunity for looking at the go-to-market engine as a kind of platform itself too, and designing, for reuse and extensibility. Yeah, that's still a earlier set of concepts, I suspect, for a lot of companies.
Well, not only that, I think what I'm hearing from Maureen is like there's a lot of just workflow, or maybe not the words she used, but it's just like get rid of that. But I see a world where you can optimize much like you do in other, whether it's sales ops or marketing ops, right? So not only do you eliminate the workflow, you say which of these campaigns are working well, and there should be almost just like a machine learned optimizing algorithm to say, just do more of these, or maybe extend them to different regions, or extend them to different product lines, whatever the case may be, to broaden or deepen the partnership, wherever it may be. So kind of put them on autopilot, if you will.
Yeah, I think in MarTech, it's interesting that what Scott said in terms of stitching together, like there is not going to be one platform that we log into that's going to see all of our 28 customer moments, right from the first Google search right to the step before vendor selection. So I'm executing a MarTech marketing operations strategy with HubSpot. I've got great emails going out. I've got social, I've got search, I've got syndicated content. I've got people reading ebooks, podcasts, things are going great. But at best, I'm going to hit 4 or 5 of those moments at best. Now, the next question is I've got this whole through channel marketing automation platform, which by the way, HubSpot uses a third party for through channel marketing automation. So now with my MDF dollars and all the things, my current partners are out doing the same good stuff. And I'm capturing that data as well. Maybe I'm getting another 4 or 5 moments there. And now there's islands of innovation. There's attribution companies that are coming from consumer impact and Partnerize and Awin, and companies that used to track, Kim Kardashian doing Instagram ads are now raising hundreds of millions of dollars to help us to go find these B2B moments. We're not finding Kim now, but we're finding the Scott Brinkers of the world that are out there, highly visible and things like that. So there's another layer of innovation, but another layer of data. Another layer is data sharing companies and account mapping. Companies like Crossbeam and Reveal and Pronto and PartnerTap and others that are innovating in another area. Not only getting us the attribution and that recognition of the moment, but we're now getting the data back from it. So now I've got 3 or 4 layers of data. And oh, guess what? In the marketing ops team with a partner ops person sitting beside them, I just saw 20 of my 28 customer moments. We're going to win more deals. And it comes to revenue, and it comes to this idea that it's a layered stack. And I think Scott was one of the first to recognize that, HubSpot is usually sold on average with 6 other ISVs. And it's a layered solution to get to that, modern kind of best case scenario operations method. And now you can repeat that for sales, repeat it for customer success and everything else. There is no one platform, but how you work all of these different areas or islands of operations and islands of innovation is what's going to drive your company to be more competitive than the next one over.
Well, now that you've mentioned my name in the same breath as a Kardashian, I feel like I should just retire and call my career a win. All right, but this is actually, I think, maybe a great pivot point.
When are you opening your fund? When are you launching your fund, Scott?
Oh goodness, where's my teenage daughter when I need her? All right, so let me just shift a little bit more on this internal advocacy side of things, because each of you had sort of brought this up earlier on. Partnerships, should we be thinking about how to demonstrate our value with these other teams in the organization through their frameworks? Like, okay, they have their existing framework, how they're being measured, and we're trying to map into those metrics and KPIs for them? Or should we be trying to create a more alternative paradigm that's perhaps a little bit more holistic, this larger view, Jay, that, I think you've helped the industry become aware of, but perhaps our peers and all of these other functional leadership things wouldn't naturally know. How do we think about that?
Yeah, I think it's fully embedded. The mistake that channels made over the last 40 years is they siloed themselves. The dealership organization at Ford, no one else knows what they do. They're all siloed, and every other industry, same thing. So we can learn from data science. When the CTO or CDO a decade ago first put data scientists in the organization, they didn't build a silo, build an empire under their organization. They embedded them into marketing. So the marketing ops leader has a data scientist sitting beside them, reporting to the same manager. They may be dotted lined over to a CTO or CDO, but the fact of the matter is they're aligned. And data science went into every line of business, from HR and operations and finance and everywhere else. And this data lake came back to the CTO to help all the other organizations. But the only way to success, and the only way to success for ecosystem leaders, is to embed their people, align to the KPIs and the initiatives, objectives of that organization. But remember, they also dotted line for the greater good. That marketing can talk to sales, can talk to customer success, can talk to the product teams and operations teams through that dotted line and through that bigger data lake is what makes all boats rise in this equation. But we can't be building an empire like we have been for decades.
Yeah, I agree. The metaphor I use is that of an engine. And if you think of an engine with various gears, they all need to work together. And the metaphor works insofar as if one of the gears isn't working, the whole engine doesn't work. Or if one of them's slow, it limits the whole capacity of the engine to move. And what do you think about your purpose to what you're talking about, your higher order reason for being and the things you're trying to accomplish are literally like the spark for the engine. It often then starts with marketing, your raison d'etre, like what's your product, the what, the why and the how of the product. And then that gets into things like partnerships, which then feed sales and then feed success. These are all the gears of the engine. They all work together. And I think your insight of siloed, if you think, I spent a lot of time in retail, and one of the big sins is like all companies ship their org charts, right? So think of these very siloed e-commerce versus things. We're in a world where converged retail is the reality now, right? And those who don't get it are learning a painful lesson. So it's true, I think, across all successful organizations that really have a customer or a goal that's really rooted in the customer, and they work backwards. What's a metaphor of an engine or whatever one you want to choose. These things have to be symbiotic and or work together to accomplish the one or two, three things. I'm just not a big fan of having separate goals for each of the different organizations that are at the top level, right? You can have sub goals, but they have to be servant to the top level purpose of a company and the main goals they're trying to accomplish.
So amen. If you try and have these numbers that no one cares about, no one tracks, they stop listening to you. So totally agree. But what I would say here is you can influence adjustments or reclassifying of the methods as your partner ecosystem grows. So what does that mean, right? Everything has to come down to sourced or influenced revenue retention, or customer upsell, right? That's how businesses run, 100%. And it's harder to track back to some of your integrations if they're not revenue driving, but then you can still tie them to customer usage, customer retention, customer upsell. Okay, still try and get up to those higher order. But here's what I would say: just because your company wants you to stick to the same definition, it doesn't mean you can't influence and adjust it. A good example: influenced revenue. Is there like, you know, an actual Webster's dictionary of what influenced revenue is? No. So that is a critical one that you really need to make sure you're not full of shit on, pardon me, that you have the data to back it up, and that you actually train your sales organization and your customer service organization to track it with you. If those don't exist, you're kind of dead. The next thing I would say that you can influence is comp plans, right? Tracking is hard. The impact is hard when you're hitting that influenced sourced. I mean, hopefully most companies get to the point of, you know, deal reg, account mapping, leveraging the tools at a certain stage. You can influence the stage in which a partner gets credit. It's an important one, super important. You can also try and influence comp plans for the data entry and for the accuracy. And then my final point of this, so again, I'm amen, amen, amen. It's just, it doesn't mean it has to stay the way it is. The other thing that I've done in the past is you can have an auditing team within your finance organization, someone removed. And what they help you do is they make sure that the sales teams are actually tracking it effectively. If your comp plans don't align and they make more money selling independently, which is a little accidental thing that companies do, you can create, you know, auditing and someone who goes through the data. So when they present it up to your CFO or your CRO, it really feels like the whole company is behind that. Those are just my thoughts.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Completely agree with everybody. I think that for me, that the key words, you know, if I think about how I operate, is define, align, and build it in, right? Defining meaning like I've got to be crystal clear in terms of like how partners add value. And in Maureen's, you know, example of sales tagging, right? You got to define all the different criteria that basically qualifies a partner action as a legit partner influence. You have to define that yourself. And once you've defined, let's say you define 5 different things, like how you also have to think about, well, how many of them do they have to satisfy in order to count their action as a partner influence on the deal? Is it 1 of 2, 2 of 5, excuse me, 1 of 5, 2 of 5, or 3 of 5? You decide. Once you have that sort of thought through, this is where you can really sit down with your sales leadership and start getting their buy-in. And once that's all done, build it into your CRM system. And this is really a good process, right? For them to really understand what it is that your partners do and how that's helping them. So you don't want to do this in silo, because this information is helpful for your cross-functional teams. It's helpful for marketing, it's helpful for sales, for product, so that you want them to bring partners into their go-to-market, because the partners can be the force multiplier in the things that they do.
Brilliant, brilliant. So very clearly how we align from a metrics perspective. I think there was universal consensus here, aligned to the KPIs and the metrics of these core teams. What about other data? Like at some level, that's a very high level argument for like why this is an important component, you know, the broader marketing and sales engine. Once people have that buy-in though, like how do you help surface the right kinds of partner data, whether it's, you know, contacts for co-selling or, you know, enablement capabilities, or, you know, how is the rest of the organization harnessing that partner ecosystem at scale? And again, bring it back to our topic of partner ops. What is partner ops doing to support that?
Yeah, I can probably kick that off. I mean, today there's 35,000 companies with a channel. And I'm going to say almost every single one of them, you know, deal in the same way. The gold, silver, bronze, you know, more transaction focused tiering. And, you know, for the first time, one of the biggest companies in the world, Microsoft, kicked off this year with a point system. And this is really where we're going to end up in a couple of years. Every company is going to have to move into a point system where, you know, what Microsoft calls it is partner assist. It's not partner influence and it's not partner source. It's literally, you did something, you wrote an ebook and said something nice about us. You know, you did an integration and, you know, we didn't lose the customer. I mean, you did something, so there's a point. And then as they're collecting the data, the ops person can go and then start to do the correlations. Did you know that, everybody that writes that, reads that ebook has a 5-time chance of buying our stuff? Cool. So that's worth more than 1 point. And so as they built out this and they made it public, made a lot of VARs angry because they took all the money from resale to fund it. But they put 2/3 of their money, which in their case is, billions of dollars of channel funding, into retention. And they now have a decoder ring there based on points. Right now, they're going on a little bit of a luck streak of, outgrowing AWS and Google for 10 straight quarters. So they didn't have to move that money before the point of transaction yet. You see a couple of quarters where their growth drops below their competitors, you'll start to see the money move in the point system. They're not really worried at the moment about landing the customer, getting them on the dance floor. Whether it's marketplace, whether it's indirect, seems to be going okay, given where they are. So they're trying to build that customer for life right now and overfunding those moments. The partner assist moments that they're seeing within their product and with external products and doubling up on those points and getting people more money is where they're at. So every company is starting to think about now, not tiering based on some financial revenue number, but starting to tier people based on the value, point of value instead of the point of sale. And that's going to be a complete, again, the first time ever in our industry, will be a complete different set of programmatic elements that come to market.
It's a very insightful point. And if you think of the evolution towards subscription or renewable businesses, of course, what's the biggest determinant of that is churn or retention, however you want to think about it. So I'm a big fan, and this could be inputs to partner ops. It could be just good inputs to a business in general. I call it the physics of a business. Like, how does it work, right? We talked about it from acquisition all the way through retention, and being very intentional about that and actually measuring. This is what growth functions do when they're really humming or working well. The way I do that, actually, I draw retention. I start with retention. So the left-hand side is retention, and you work backwards. Right, so instead of the opposite way, people usually draw a funnel or something. I actually draw it the opposite way and say, look, what is retention and churn, and what do we know about that? And then you work your way back. What I like about what Jay's adding here is this concept I've always thought of. I used to call them micro conversions as opposed to macro conversions. You think about again a retail website, like a e-commerce site. It's not just the conversion that counts, right? Some came, maybe they were in a B2B setting, they downloaded a white paper, all those things you said. These are all micro conversions, and the best of the best have always been attacking it the way in which you're describing, which is some sort of value. Could be a point, or it could be something, and then your data science teams are mapping it to the key outcomes that you care about, whether that's a brand outcome, whether it's a retention outcome. But to me, it's like work from retention back, right? Because SaaS is all about retention. Everything else kind of pales in comparison, really, if you get a good business. So I like that concept, and the systems that can be in place to wrap all those things together are incredibly valuable.
All right, let me move to a different topic here. See if we can make through our 3 days seminar here in our last 10 minutes or so. A couple other things from a partner ops perspective. One is actually, frankly, just managing the communications across that ecosystem at scale. Would love to, get people's insight and advice on what does that look like when you're doing this among hundreds or thousands of partners.
I'm happy to take a stab. This is not easy, but you have to do it, and you have to invest time and have a really good writer and someone who cares about this and is thinking about it. So you have your traditional things, newsletters. It should actually be, first of all, I hope your Marketo or whatever your database is tracks by your partner type so that not everybody gets blanket. If you really want to connect and build that trust and that relationship, it's super ideal if even if you can nuance some of those newsletters slightly for your partnership type. These are all standard. If you have a partner portal, It would be ideal if there was some sort of posting. It can be updates that are critical to them. You've got to keep that going, and it should trigger an update out into your email and bring them back into your portal. But the other thing that I think we've started to do, and I hope it's as valuable, is you've got to bring them in a little early. Can your partners know something a little bit before everybody else? So specifically strategic partners or tech partners, you want to give them early view into roadmap. They've all signed your NDAs. You want them to understand when there's new integrations or tools you want them to leverage. And then the other big, I know this is not as scalable and it depends on funding, but we're launching a partner advisory board. Why do we only have customer advisory boards, y'all? Right? We're launching a partner advisory board, and it will be broken out by partnership type and its function. And we're doing it in lockstep with our product organization and our revenue organization. So just a few ways, but it has to be consistent. It has to give them value, or no one's going to read it.
I completely agree. Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind was customized messages, particularly when you have a pretty diverse ecosystem of partners, right? Like, make your communications role-based. You know, are they an ISV? Are they a channel? And what do they need to know to fulfill their purpose? Like, so if you're talking to a reseller partners, they want to sell more deals. So like, give them the information that's going to help them fulfill that purpose. If you're talking to product partners, they probably want to build a better experience. So do you have things, and I love the fact that, like, if we can share something that's coming down the pipeline, that's just, you know, letting them know a little earlier before everybody else, is a very nice thing to do for the partners. And the second thing is the right frequency. Like, partners want to hear from you, but like not too much. So figuring out that right balance is pretty important too. I think those are kind of like the practical things, right? And then there's like the ethos of how you want to run your partner program and all the communications, because that's the trust piece of it. Like, be transparent. If something is not working out well, let people know. And then also, like, be available. When you have a lot of partners, particularly the smaller ones, they always feel like they're not going to get anybody's time, right? They're going to go straight to a robot or straight to some sort of automated system. You don't want them to feel that way, because those smaller partners can be your next premier or your next, platinum partner in the future. So you want to be available and help them grow and help them be successful. And then finally, just be kind. I mean, this is a human business. Like, people like partnering and working together with other human beings that they like. So be kind to your partners.
Yeah, this is probably my biggest pet peeve, is Scott's question, and Connie, what you're getting to is, there's a top-down strategy of communication and a bottoms-up. I mean, there's 6 different roles that you're communicating and things like that. But, of the companies, I think 99% of them get it wrong. HubSpot actually gets it partially right. And it's more based on individuals, I think, than, strategy. But, a company that comes off a huge inbound event and just a wonderful community and all kinds of communication vehicles, people feel really warm and fuzzy in that community. But there's people inside HubSpot, up and down, that recognize 80% of what partners read, where they go, and the people they follow have nothing to do with HubSpot. They're out reading magazines, they're joining associations and peer groups like Partnership Leaders. They're out, listening to podcasts. And, for every company that I run across, and I've had 3 of them today, that, we're really interested in managed service providers. Great. There's 84,000 of them. Do you know what they read? Do you know where they go? Do you know who they follow? Because yesterday you would have been in DC, because 7,000 of them were at an event in DC yesterday. You weren't there. Today, 7,000 other ones are in Orlando at the biggest, second biggest magazines event. Isn't owned by the vendor, but there are 14 spheres of influence in this community play that you make. And why I see Scott, 4 times a day on a podcast and a couple times in a magazine, and he's broadly out there. And there's a handful of other people at HubSpot that recognize 80% of the influence happens outside of the firewall. And some companies get this, most don't. That's the bottom up. You're always going to have people at your biggest GSIs, sitting in cubicles, at your biggest resellers, at your biggest MSPs. I mean, that's easy to do. There's no advice there other than hiring good people and making sure that the relationships are there and your biggest distributors and things. But this grassroots, bottom-up communication, being able to do the one-to-many and build up the community, understanding that, most of it sits outside of your firewall, is almost, what every company gets wrong.
Well, that actually is the perfect segue to my last question for this group. Jay, one of the stats you had said earlier here, you were referring to HubSpot, but I think this is a dynamic we see in a lot of ecosystems. For any given customer, they're not being touched by one partner. They're very often being touched by a collection of different partners. What should we be doing from a partner ops perspective to help facilitate partners connecting with each other and being able to work together effectively?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick answer. I mean, there's 7 of them. According to McKinsey's research, your average mid-market and enterprise customer already has 7 partners they trust. And you can do the math on your TAM and your SAM and how many customers are out there as prospects, and that you can multiply out to get how many literally partners are influencing your customer. For most companies, they come up with a 0 too low. It's always 10 times higher than what they guess. It's why Salesforce is about to announce next week that they're going after 500,000 partners. It's why Microsoft brings on 400 new partners a day. If you're in security like Okta, there's 1 million partners today that are out having security conversations, and less than 100,000 of them that are actually selling security. It's always bigger than you think. And to be able to do that top down, bottom up, it becomes everything. And that's where the total partnership. So understanding where they fit in that customer and the value they're adding and how you can help them, make more money as a multiplier and obviously help you help them, 1 + 1 = 3, becomes, I think, everything as part of your program.
Connie, Maureen, Chris, any thoughts on if we agree with that, like from an ops perspective, like how can we help facilitate that?
I can speak to some of the experience from past lives, like at Evernote and other places where we've had really well curated communities. I always thought of them as concentric circles. So you have the tight ring, maybe it's a 7 or 8 that really matter. I think the reality is there's lots of different spheres or lots of different concentric circles of partners. And if you think holistically about a community, it could be a Reddit community. It could be much broader than we tend to think about partners, right? People who are influencing, there's a really tight group where you treat them with the white glove. You have an advisory group or board or whatever you want to call it, and you know them by name and you treat them accordingly. But then there are concentric circles of others, and I think the best of the best are thinking about what each of those concentric circles really look like and how you participate and how you orchestrate the community to accomplish the things that are mutually beneficial for everyone else. So I think it is thinking through the community lens first. So for example, of those 7, how might those 7 be able to help one another in the confines through the lens that your company or your community more generally could add value to them, whether that's sharing leads or whether it's doing other things like that. But that's how I thought about it, is like tight circle, really white glove, and then you have much more diffuse but still important communities that you need to manage and orchestrate accordingly.
Just the number 7 sounds about right. But more importantly, I think you have to, if you're going to nurture it, let's say it doesn't exist today and you don't have a way of communicating, you can do it by solution, right? So for example, we have these tech partners and integrations that really help our customers. And then we have our resellers and solution providers and SIs. Well, and it's really hard just to say, oh, I'm going to magically make them all get along. So how you get there is you start to hand over tools and playbooks. And we started to do it just to make it, I don't know, sometimes things aren't digestible when you're looking at so many different partners. So we started with playbooks by verticals or by use cases. And then we showcase these partners over here, these more technology partners and integrations, and started feeding and handing them over to the solution providers. I know that sounds really rudimentary, but you just can't expect it to all of a sudden happen someday, right? Again, software will be phenomenal where you can have linkages and recommendations and communities. I'm sure they're out there. I don't have the luxury of leveraging them quite yet, but you have to feed them in the beginning and literally have one of your strategic partner managers make sure that that works well, and then repeat it into the next solution, and then repeat it, and then repeat it.
Oh, brilliant. Love that.
Mic drop.
Connie, any last words?
No, I'm sorry. The reference of Scott and a Kardashian was already, that was like,
Right.
I just
Off the
followed him.
rails.
I buy whatever he's selling on the internet.
I certainly don't have a number 8. I think that was very, very comprehensive, that everybody covered. I would say too that, when you don't have anything today and you're just building it out, I focus your time, build 1 to 2 very solid relationships, because, this again, it's an art and science project, right? There is like that certain chemistry you have to figure out with your partners. How do they work? What are their strengths? What kind of regions and verticals you want to go after? How do the teams come together? And you have to find people you really trust with your deals and opening up your kimono and bringing them into all the other things that you've got. And so really, spending the time to vet and build that chemistry and build that playbook is extremely important. That's the foundation on which you build out a more of a scalable approach.
Wow, that is a perfect summary for our closing here. So I know Asher wanted to come back and also say a thank you, but before I turn the mic over to him, I just want to express my thanks to all of you, Connie, Maureen, Jay, Chris. I learned a ton from this discussion. I hope all the folks listening in here felt the same. Asher, thank you for this platform.
No, thank you all. I just want to thank you all, but tell the audience a little bit about Partnership Leaders. We are a community, but we're actually trying to become a platform for success for partnership pros and executives. But I will also say that in the 3 exits that I've had in my relatively short career, I've never seen this much love for partner operations, and I'm just glad that we're all coming together and building this function out and sharing information on how people can build this function out, because my firm belief is that you need operations to scale. If you want to do something big, you got to have solid ops, right? And it's been true for every one of the companies that I've had the privilege of serving at. So folks, I want to say thank you to Kelly, who has been my partner in crime in building this whole campaign out. I want to say thank you to the esteemed panel. And I know we have a lot more coming. This was just the first, I would say, flavor of all the work that we're doing. So I appreciate all the hard work, and thank you for building this with us.